So since I've written my book on correcting constipation naturally, I've gotten this question about toddlers dealing with constipation probably thousands of times. And I've just put off making this video because I just don't like talking about kids a whole lot, because there's a lot of things that can go wrong with kids. And if something goes wrong with somebody's kid, well, they want to blame what you just told them to do. And oh man, I gave my kid this supplement that you mentioned and now he hates his grandma. So obviously that's your fault. So you owe their grandma one kid that loves them. So get right on that. So I just don't talk about kids a whole lot for that reason. But I also have kids. And I know that when something goes wrong with your kid, you really want to find an answer to help them get past whatever discomfort that they're having. And I got a question from a viewer that really made me realize I really have to make this video and just at least explain the most common issues that are going on when a kid is dealing with a chronic constipation issues, and the things that I figured out with my own kids when they got constipated. I had to figure out, well, I know how to fix it with adults, so let's see what we can do with kids. So I'm going to share that information in this video and give you some insights to at least understand the most likely underlying causes and help you figure out some steps that you feel are going to be best for your kid. Let's get at it.
T.C. Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So remember, I'm not a doctor, I'm not giving anybody medical advice, and I'm certainly not giving any medical advice for your child. I'm just a nutrition author who found some answers about how to correct constipation, and I'll share some studies here that'll help you give some insights, and you can dig deeper into those studies as well. But it was over on our video for the importance of balancing both sides of digestion that Vasiliki asks, and there's like a 2% chance that I am saying your name correctly. So is it Vasiliki? I feel like I'm making it worse. So we're just going to call you V, and I apologize for brutally mispronouncing your name. But V says, I've seen a lot of your videos and I would like to suggest you make one for toddlers' constipation and withholding. There's at least one group with thousands of parents trying to solve their kids' constipation and withholding. The main suggestion in the group is to use sodium ascorbate or magnesium citrate in large amounts to get things moving and then have a stool test to find the root cause. But what if the cause is low stomach acid or bile not working properly? And can the small kids at 2, 3, or 4 years of age have issues with these things? And can they take supplements to increase stomach acid when they still can't swallow tablets or pills? And where and how does the I don't want to poop and trying to hold it play into this? So many people would benefit if you'd make this video. I hope you do. So I think that you're right, and hearing the solutions that they're talking about in this group, apparently, I want to help people understand why does this help and what are you actually doing when it does help, so you can figure out, is this the right thing for my child? And if it is, how long should I do this? And when should I stop doing this? So when we're looking at constipation in any human, and I know that this might surprise you a little bit, but toddlers are human. I know a lot of times you don't, like, that's not a human right there, but they're human and their bodies function a lot like ours do. So when we're looking at the malfunctions that often create chronic constipation, it's going to be similar with kids. And the biggest reality that we need to understand is that there is no remedy for chronic constipation, and it's never going to exist. And the reason that is because there's more than one possible underlying cause for chronic constipation. So how could there ever be a solution that's going to work for everybody if different people have different causes? So when we're looking at the most common underlying causes of constipation, one of the biggest ones is a lack of stomach acid. And when we eat food, our stomach should make hydrochloric acid, or HCl. And that helps us acidify that food so that we can break the food down and get all the nutrients out of that food. So that's very important. The problem is it's very common for a wide variety of reasons for people not to be making enough stomach acid. And when there's not enough stomach acid there, you can't really acidify that food to break it down. So in order for the body to break the food down, it has to break down by process of like rotting and fermenting. and that can take a lot longer. It can create all these gases and toxins and junk. And the biggest problem when we're looking at constipation is that when this food leaves the stomach and starts to go through this intestinal tract, it'll move through at a pace according to its acidity level. So if food does get acidified correctly in the stomach, but then when it leaves, it doesn't get neutralized by alkaline bile and there's bicarb and things that come out. If it's not getting neutralized, it'll continue to move through in its acidic state, and then the body will say, oh, well, I can't have that happening because this stomach acid is made to break down protein. So that stomach acid is going to break down the protein lining of this intestinal pathway. So I can't have that happen. I'm going to bring all the water I can to cool it off, and I'm going to rush it out the back door. So it'll move through at a faster pace and can even create diarrhea issues. So that's one possible cause of chronic diarrhea problems. But when the food is not getting acidified, now this bolus of food that's moving through the intestinal tract has more of an alkaline pH. And when that's the case, it will move at a slower pace. And when it moves very slowly, that causes it to get more hard and more dry and more difficult to move. So that's one possible cause of chronic constipation, is a person's inability to acidify that food correctly. The second most common cause that is related to that is some type of overgrowth in that digestive tract, some type of bacteria, yeast, mold, fungus, something type of overgrowth in there, and that overgrowth has a waste product, just like all of us do. And the waste for a lot of those microorganisms is alkaline. So if you have all this overgrowth either in your stomach or in your small intestine, where it would be SIBO, or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, like you hear a lot about today. But if there's an overgrowth there, that waste product can make that environment even more alkaline. So maybe you are acidifying the food, but then there's an overgrowth down here that's alkalizing everything, and that's going to cause it to move through at a slower pace. But the reason that that overgrowth often gets in is because of the lack of stomach acid. That acid is not just there to help us acidify our food, it's also the barrier to the whole body. So when these varmints come in on the food that we're eating, they're supposed to die in an acid bath, and then they don't come in and set up camp. But when there's not enough acid in that stomach, it's not being produced correctly, then they come in and they set up camp and they have a keg party, and it's a great time. And they thrive there. And the more they thrive, the more of that waste that they put out, and if it's alkaline, it's going to slow everything way down. So we see two options here for things that can really create a slowdown in the process of moving that stool through the system and out the back door. And even though they have the ability to be connected, they're not always connected. It can be two different problems creating that chronic constipation issue. And so that you can see that I didn't get this information in a Paw Patrol coloring book, we'll look at this study here, and I'll put the links to these studies below so you can dig into these more. But we see the study on proton pump inhibitor use and risk of serious infections in young children. And basically a proton pump inhibitor it's like an acid reflux medication that's used to reduce that acid reflux symptom for a lot of people. And millions of people are using this and turning off stomach acid on purpose on a daily basis. And a PPI just restricts the body's ability to make that stomach acid, so now that acid is not coming back up and burning us and creating that symptom. But this study says that PPI use has been associated with bone fractures, acute kidney injury, allergy, asthma, and inflammatory bowel diseases in children. They are also suspected of leading to infections through pH modification or direct action on the immune system. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at turning off this stomach acid opens the front door, so all the bad guys can come in. And that's what the study's saying, is that when you turn off that stomach acid, you're increasing the chance of creating some type of overgrowth here. And when we look at all of those other issues that study said is associated, like bone fracture and asthma and allergies and all these things, we have other videos that kind of talk about how hypochlorhydria, that's what low stomach acid is called, hypochlorhydria. We have other videos that talk about how that can happen and how reducing your ability to access nutrients in the food you're eating reduces the amount of nutrients that are available to the body to do things like rebuild bones and strengthen the body. So We really want this to work correctly. And we know now that acid reflux is not really caused by too much stomach acid like advertisers want us to believe. It's in most cases caused by a lack of stomach acid because there's this valve at the bottom of the esophagus called the lower esophageal sphincter that closes when the stomach starts to acidify our food. But the valve is triggered by stomach acid. So if someone doesn't have enough stomach acid, that valve doesn't get triggered to close, and then the small amount of acid that they have is going to come back up and burn them. So maybe they have some acid there, but just not enough to trigger that valve to close, so then it comes back up and burns them. So then we use these PPIs to turn off the acid altogether, and then that relieves that symptom, but now the front door is open. So that's kind of what this study is telling us. And the conclusion of this study was, in this study, increased risk of serious infection was associated with PPI use in young children overall and for various sites and pathogens. So it wasn't just an infection in the stomach or the small intestine. They were listing other areas that rate seems to go up once you turn off that main barrier of things, the bad guys coming in. And in this population, PPIs should not be used without clear indications. So this is just an opinion of one study. This is not me telling you not to use a PPI with your kid if your doctor told you to use that. We're just pointing out that it's shown in the medical literature that when that stomach acid is low, it increases the ability for these bad guys to come in and set up camp. And a person doesn't need to be taking a PPI to have low stomach acid. There's a lot of reasons that stomach acid will not be produced correctly. And in a lot of cases, this digestive process is just not fully developed and working correctly when we're looking at children. A lot of times kids will have issues that they grow out of because the digestive system develops enough to start working correctly and allow these things to function the right way. So the third common issue that seems to create this chronic constipation issue is water displacement. And it was Dr. Emanuel Rivisi who helped us understand that the body has this natural circadian rhythm at the cellular level. So during the day, the body should be in what's called a catabolic state, where it's very good at kind of creating energy and keeping us going all day, but also breaking down tissues so that they can be rebuilt and renewed. And then at night, the body should move into this anabolic state where the body is very good at sleeping and resting and rebuilding and repairing. So you can see both of those states are appropriate. We want both of those things to happen. The problem is, for a wide variety of reasons, some people will get stuck in one of these states most of the time. Or maybe they're just pushed way too far into a state. And when the body has an imbalance like that, it has the ability to create a wide variety of symptoms and health issues. So the important thing to understand when we're looking at the chronic constipation is that if a body is stuck in this catabolic state, it will send more of the body's water to the bowels and less to the kidneys, and that can create chronic diarrhea issues. Now, there's other causes of chronic diarrhea, but this is one possible issue. And if someone's really stuck in this anabolic state most of the time, more of the water goes to the kidneys and less goes to the bowels. With less water going to the bowels are going to get drier and harder and more difficult to move. So in a lot of cases, when we're looking at that chronic constipation issue, we see people dealing with both low stomach acid and they're way too far in this anabolic state. So they have more than one thing working against them, and they're just like, why won't the poop come out? All the cool kids are pooping. I just want to poop. But they have too many things working against them. It's just not going to happen. They have to help work with their body to correct these issues. And when we're looking at kids kind of grow at this crazy rapid rate when they're really small. And a lot of people feel like, well, they're just leaning a little bit more in that anabolic state on purpose so the body can rebuild and kind of grow and just build all this new tissue. It needs to be in this anabolic state to do that. So maybe they're either leaning too far into that state, or maybe they stay there a little bit too often, and then more of that water is going through the kidneys, so they might be peeing more, but less is going to the bowels, and it results in that constipation. And an interesting thing that we see in this overly anabolic state with adults is we see a lot of anxiety, because in this anabolic state, the body creates energy through fermentation, and a byproduct of creating energy that way is lactic acid. And high levels of lactic acid have the ability to create anxiety and even panic attacks. Now, there's other causes of anxiety and panic attacks, but this is a very common one that we see. And it's also very common to see people dealing with both anxiety and constipation. When we look at this study, the anxiety disorders in children with functional constipation, a case control study, they kind of concluded by looking at these studies that anxiety was higher in children with functional constipation than in children without functional constipation. And that's not to say that everybody with anxiety is going to have constipation and everybody that's constipated is going to have anxiety, but it helps us understand that, oh wow, a lot of people are seeing this kind of line up where they're dealing with both anxiety and constipation. And with our clients, we see both of those issues very commonly with an overly anabolic state. So that doesn't mean that if your kid is constipated, they're overly anabolic, but if you can take steps to kind of investigate that a little bit and get an idea of, is this the case with my kid, then all of a sudden you have a starting point. Now you have something that you can work to correct and see, does that correct this symptom? So when we're working with clients, we teach them how to run simple self-tests at home with tools that they can pick up, like at a pharmacy or a health food store, just to get an idea of where their body chemistry might be lying. And one thing that we look at is urine and saliva pHs, and a possible marker for this anabolic imbalance is a high urine pH, like a urine pH over like 6.1 or 6.2. And it's pretty easy to buy pH testing strips at a pharmacy or a health food store. And you can use this just to look at your kids' pHs. And it can be hard to get a kid to pee in a cup, but I got this thing that it's basically just like this little bowl that sits on the toilet, and then you put the lid down, and if the kid is potty trained or where they can go in the toilet, then they just pee in this bowl and you can test the pH that way. And I don't have a link to this, I got this a long time ago, but these things are common to see. It's just catches the urine in the bowl for testing purposes. So if you look at your kid's urine pH and it's really high, that's not a diagnostic thing, but it's like, oh well, that's a marker for this anabolic imbalance. Maybe I need to keep that information in my head to see if other things show up, or if I take steps to improve that, does it really help? And when we look at the other factors that are really common to see when you dig into this topic on the internet, you're going to see factors like stress. It really has the ability to increase constipation in children, and it has the ability to do that with adults as well. And an important thing to understand about stress is that stress pushes the autonomic nervous system into what's called the sympathetic fight or flight state. There's two sides, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic rest and digest side. So in order for the body to really be able to make hydrochloric acid properly, it needs to be able to be in that parasympathetic rest and digest state. So if someone's really stressed out, or maybe even their body is really stressed out, maybe it's dealing with some type of infection or overgrowth and it's basically going to war against this overgrowth all day, and the body is stressed, that can push the body into that sympathetic state as well. But if a kid or a person is really stressed, it can reduce or restrict their ability to make the proper level of that hydrochloric acid to acidify that food correctly. So that can be a very big deal. Diet can be a very big deal too, because excess carbohydrates and sugars will push the body more into that anabolic state, where it's sending more of the water to the kidneys and less to the bowels. And kids just eat more and more junk nowadays, and some kids are really hard to get them to eat correctly. I get it. Here's some chicken, here's some broccoli, and oh, I just want goldfish crackers. I'll eat goldfish crackers or I'll starve. That's your choice, Daddy. And so it can be very difficult to get a kid to eat correctly, but this can play a really big role. So if the kid is just eating carbohydrates and sugars, or excessive carbohydrates and sugars, that can be pushing them further into that anabolic state and causing the constipation problem. Another thing is food sensitivity issues. Like, you'll find a lot of people saying like, oh, there was this allergy to cow's milk and that was doing it. And most people view cow's milk like it's a beneficial thing for their kid. Oh, I got to give my kid this calcium. Oh, they had milk when they were a baby, they need milk now. But if this is new information for you, just Google, is cow's milk bad for my kid? And you're going to freak out. You're just going to freak out. It's really not ideal. There's really a lot of bad things about cow's milk that's not really helping the kid at all. And it's not even a good source of calcium coming in. The calcium is in the milk, but as far as the body being able to assimilate it, it's really not the best way to do that. But things like this are a common issue when you're looking at constipation, and a lot of these food sensitivity issues come about because the person can't break the food down properly. They can't acidify it correctly, so it doesn't get fully broken down, and now it's coming into the system, and when it's not really in these elemental nutrient state, it's still like this state of food, and the body's like, I don't know what a chicken sandwich is. That looks like an invader. Let's attack that, and then we create these food sensitivity issues. So that can be a possible issue when we're looking at some of that, and sometimes people have to remove some foods, and you might have to dig into what's an elimination diet, and is that something I even need to do with a kid? It's just possible. So the biggest thing when you research this is you're going to find that cow's milk is the biggest offender in this situation. So if your kid's really constipated and you're just chugging cow's milk down his gullet all day, you might want to research that a little bit to see, is that really the best move? So when V was talking about all the solutions that he saw people using, magnesium is very popular. And the reason that magnesium works is because guess what? It's one of the most pro-catabolic minerals. So it's going to push a person out of that anabolic state. It's going to push them more catabolic, which means the body will send more of the water to the bowels and less to the kidneys, and now it's easier for that stool to move. And so magnesium can be very helpful in that regard if the constipation is being caused by someone leaning too far in that anabolic state. If their constipation is coming from an overgrowth, or their constipation is just coming from a lack of that ability to acidify their food correctly, then magnesium is not going to correct any of that. However, if you use enough magnesium, it's going to push enough water to the bowels to just shove everything out the back door. But you didn't really fix the problem. You just created diarrhea. So that actually can have some benefits if some kind of kid is having some kind of fecal compaction situation that's really going to be a problem. A lot of times it's just like, find a way to get this out the door. And I'm not saying to use a lot of magnesium to fix that problem with your kid. That's just what a lot of people do. But what you want to understand is that magnesium is not only the solution. Sometimes it's just a Band-Aid. Sometimes it's about these other things going wrong that need to have some attention. Another thing that we like to see people do is use vitamin C in the form of ascorbic acid. V mentioned that people using sodium ascorbate, which is a form of vitamin C, and we find that ascorbic acid works much better because it's more acidic. It's helping us acidify this intestinal tract. But it's doing it in a more gentle way. It does it much more gentle than HCl would when you're looking at a kid. So you can find liquid forms of vitamin C, and when you buy junk vitamin C in pretty much any store, it's usually just ascorbic acid. And ascorbic acid isn't actually all of the vitamin C molecule, it's just like a fractionated portion of it. And they'll sell it as an immune booster or something, and it really does not help the immune system very much because it's just a fraction of that vitamin C. But in this case, it can be really useful to help acidify that stool. Guess what else ascorbic acid can do? It can help to lower the urine pH. So if someone's urine pH is really high, indicating they might be leaning too far on that anabolic side, then some ascorbic acid could not just help acidify this intestinal pathway a little bit and to get things moving. Remember, it moves at a faster pace when it's leaning more on the acidic side. But if it helped lower the urine pH too and pull them out of that extreme anabolic state, then that could be a double whammy. That could really be beneficial for some people. And I'm not going to give you a brand. I'm not going to give you any specific things. Again, with kids, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You're going to have to take this information and do your research and decide what's right for your kid. This is your kid. But you can find liquid forms of vitamin C, and when you look at the ingredients, you're going to see that it's pretty much ascorbic acid, and then maybe like, ooh, here's some orange flavor so your kid doesn't yell at you when you give it to them. So you're going to find things like that, and we've used those with a lot of kids. That it seems to be beneficial and help them get their stool moving in a more gentle way. When we're correcting these things with adults, we use really aggressive stuff to wipe out overgrowths, or we use what's called betaine HCl capsules, which is really just stomach acid in a capsule. But like V was saying, how do you fix this when a kid can't swallow a capsule? Well, you can't do that, now can you? And you certainly don't want to open up an HCl capsule and dump it into water and have the kid drink it, because that's going to cause damage to the esophagus. That's like having reflux. That's that HCl going down the esophagus. It's not going to be great. So we just don't do that. Opening a capsule of magnesium or something, well, that's a little bit more gentle. I don't see a real big problem with that. I'm not telling you to do that, but I've done that with my children, and I've heard from others who have done that, and that's how they got the magnesium in there. When I do this, especially like with my own kids, I'm using very small amounts. I'm not going in and just blasting them like some idiot. I'm going to be gentle when it's a kid because it's a smaller one of those human things. So I want to use as little of anything as possible until I get the result that I'm looking for. And when you're giving a kid magnesium, some people feel like, oh, you shouldn't give them magnesium unless they're also going to get some type of broad spectrum mineral type vitamin type supplement situation, maybe some type of liquid mineral supplement that gives them a wider variety of minerals so that you're not making that magnesium much higher and out of balance of everything else. And sometimes a person can't make enough hydrochloric acid because the body just doesn't have enough minerals that it needs. Like it needs the chloride ion that we would find in salt. It needs like zinc to do that. So sometimes just helping a kid get a little bit more nutrients like that can help the body function a little bit better and correct any type of lower stomach acid issue that might be going on. Another thing we want to think about when we're trying to manipulate where the water is going, can we send more water to the bowel? One thing we need to think about is, well, is the kid drinking any water? A lot of kids don't like water and they just won't drink it. Maybe they're just drinking like fruit juice or even soda or something, and the parent is like, oh, well, that's got water in it. But it's really not the same thing. You really want the kid to have some water. If they're just drinking fruit juice or soda, well, you're getting some water in there, but it's all in this sugarified form. And remember, the sugars and carbs are going to push them more into that anabolic state. So now they may be getting that water, but they're being pushed more into a state where the body's just going to push that water through the kidneys anyways. So they're really not getting the benefits of that water. And I know it can be hard to get a kid to drink water, but my kids only drink water. That's all they drink. And just know that it can happen. Not that it's going to be easy, but it can happen. So you just want to get the kids to have some water so that there's at least some water that can be sent to the bowels. Another possible tool can be pickles. A lot of kids really like pickles, and if they're not acidifying their food, the pickle has that vinegar in it, and vinegar is slightly acidic and can help acidify the stomach a little bit. It's not anywhere near as acidic as HCl would be, but it can be enough to help some kids. The problem is vinegar is also pro-anabolic. So you got to be kind of careful in not using a whole lot of pickles. And a pickle is really going to help a kid that's not acidifying correctly, but it might not be the answer for someone whose constipation is coming from their leaning too far on that anabolic side. So you got to kind of look at some things to see if pickles is going to be right for you or not. But a big step that can really help is just reducing those carbs and sugars that are pushing them more in that anabolic state. And most kids need some carbs or sugars. You're not going to be able to remove all those. I'm not saying put your kid on a ketogenic diet. I don't feel like that's the best move for a variety of reasons. I'm a fan of ketogenic diets, but there's some things with kids that I just don't like what it does to the chemistry. But reducing the amount of carbohydrates or sugars could be beneficial and help moving them out of that overly anabolic state if that's where they are. And you can just kind of watch their pHs. That's what's nice about this, is you can take steps to see, oh, am I improving this imbalance and helping the body send more water to the bowels? Or am I looking at this pH later and seeing that, oh, I haven't done enough. It's not moving at all. Maybe I need to reduce carbs more. Maybe they need a little more magnesium, or maybe I need some more of this liquid ascorbic acid to bring the urine pH down. It can give you an idea if you're going in the right direction or if maybe you need to investigate some other steps. But the main thing is to really understand how this works. And this can be a complicated situation to really understand, but the more you understand about constipation, the easier this is going to be for you to figure out what's going to be right for your kid. So my book, Constipation, Kick It Naturally, kind of walks you through all the tests that you can run and different supplements that can help, and really understanding the whole structure of what's going wrong. And the book is available on Amazon, but I'll put a link in the description below where you can get the whole thing totally for free. And that'll just walk you through understanding that process. And that book is written with adults in mind. It's not a book for kids, but the more you understand about the human body and how it's functioning when we're looking at constipation, the more it's going to help you understand how to guide this situation to help your kid. And when we look at the other things that you hear about that don't always work super well, things like fiber and probiotics and why don't we just use botulism to kind of help, that muscle relax so that the kid can poop, and that's not something that I do. But fiber and probiotics can be important aspects of digestion and bowel movement. The problem is when these things that we talked about are going wrong, fiber and probiotics aren't going to do anything. That's why you hear so many people saying, oh, I did that and it didn't help at all. When you're just shoving fiber into this pipe that's not moving, it's like trying to shove a ping pong ball through a pipe. It's not going to move. So fiber can be very helpful when there is movement and things are moving correctly. It can kind of help more junk move out, but it's not going to help fix the problem. Same with probiotics. If someone's not making enough stomach acid, probiotics aren't really going to fix that. If someone has an overgrowth, putting probiotics is probably going to create more discomfort because there's going to be this battle between all the good guys and the bad guys. So probiotics can be very beneficial, but sometimes you might have to take steps to reduce an overgrowth a little bit before you can put probiotics in there in a way that's going to be tolerable to a child. And when we think about the withholding thing and I don't want to poop, again, these are not actual humans, but they're sort of like humans. We have to think about what could be going on here, because when this medical world looks at a situation and they look at your kid and they say, oh, we did tests and we don't see anything wrong, it's just something that they're doing. It's in their head. They're withholding it. They're doing this on purpose. And the reality is that when things get really dry and hard and difficult to move and this kid tries to poop, it's not a good time for the kid. It's very unpleasant. It can even hurt. This can create a lot of discomfort, and they're going to associate that discomfort with pooping and say, well, I just don't want to do that. That makes sense. So in a lot of cases, it's about helping the body function a little bit better so that the kid doesn't have that fear. It doesn't have that association with the discomfort. Now, can there be things going on mentally or emotionally that are magnifying that I don't want to poop thing? Absolutely. We're people. We're really messed up like that. A lot of things can go wrong. But since this withholding thing seems to be the number one cause of chronic constipation with kids, and it's a way of saying we don't know what's wrong, it must be your kid's fault, I just feel like when you can take steps to help the body function a little bit better, all of a sudden the kid has the ability to function a little bit better. And we talk a lot about the importance of proper bile flow, and V was asking about that with constipation. And a lot of people don't have their bile moving correctly, and it creates a lot of problems. But usually constipation is not one of those problems. Usually they'll be constipated if bile is flowing correctly, but there's not enough stomach acid, so now this alkaline bile made the stool too alkaline. And you may also hear people telling you to, take ox bile to fix constipation because bile is like a lubricant and it'll help lube things up and move them through. And that will help 1 out of about 1,000 cases. It's very rare that we see ox bile improve constipation. It does happen, but very rare. Because when you put ox bile in, again, you're further alkalizing things that are already too alkaline and moving slow. So that's not a step that we like to use when we're trying to correct constipation. So I hope that understanding of the most common underlying causes of constipation helps you understand what's going on and steps that might help. There's other possible things that can go wrong, but these seem to be the cases in most situations. So I hope that helps, and I hope the free book down below can help you understand these things even more. And if you want to understand right now, do I even have low stomach acid, or is my kid showing signs of them not making enough stomach acid, and is that what's slowing things down? You can jump over and check out our video on 10 signs of low stomach acid. I can't wait to hear about your results.